Alright, so we're starting this semester off. I'm going to try to keep these videos much shorter, so I'm focusing them down on some just like core key concepts, not really big kind of unit or themes. We're going to focus on specific things. We may have 2 or 3 videos a night, but hopefully I can keep them down shorter underneath the 10 mark. But to do that, we gotta move. Alright, so Western lands. Alright, we have a whole lot of land out west. I think that's kind of known. A huge portion to occupy. But the thing is that we've got to get it settled. We've got to get it settled quick. Jefferson's vision of an entire country full of small human farmers that are completely free. They don't have to worry about a boss. They don't have to worry about a paycheck. They pull from the land what they need. And we have enough land to make that become a reality. We just have to get people out there. It's easier said than done. But what's going to happen is Southerners had actually been against this before the Civil War. Their idea was that those Western lands, if they were small, poor farmers, they were going to be against slavery expanding. And they also didn't want the immigrants coming into the country moving to the West either. But this is where Lincoln got a little sneaky and where Congress got a little sneaky. 3 of these land grant acts that are going to revolutionize the West and put a lot of people in their plots of land are in the early part of the Civil War. Kind of sneaking one by while all the Southern senators and representatives are in a different country and fighting them. So if you're not in D.C., you don't have a say. So, yeah. We'll also talk about the Oklahoma Land Rush, which is a little bit later, and then we'll come back to the Dawes Act in 1887. It's a little different than the other ones. Alright, but the first one I want to take a look at is the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act is going to be a big kind of boom to poor farmers moving out to the West. Again, its context is during the Civil War, and the big thing here is we have California, we have Missouri, but there is a lot of territory in between it. It's really acting like an inland ocean right now. It might as well be because it's hard to settle there. There's nobody there, but it's kind of an obstacle we have to get across to get to California. But the end result of this Homestead Act is going to be a lot of people out in the West starting their first farms that look a lot like this. This is going to be called a sod house or a soddy. This is what a lot of the early homesteaders built. They're building a small hillside kind of home. Built into the hill. You see the cow up there on top of the roof, which is really just the kind of hill that they've built in, almost like a hobbit house. Right, but what the Homestead Act is going to do is it's going to give each person who's the head of a household, had to be 21, sometimes 18 in certain situations, and actually it could go lower than that if there were extenuating circumstances. Let's say you were an orphan, but you had now kind of married and got a family, you were 16, you were headed out west. Yeah, that could happen. But it's giving you completely free land. If you were 21, you built a house, as my phone goes off, you improved the land in some way. Now, this improving of the land usually meant farming. It could mean orchards. We'll come back to that one in a second. Lived on the property at least 6 months out of the year, and you occupied the land for 5 consecutive years. At the end of that 5th year, you could go back into the office and pay a little small registration fee. I think it was about $5, which was more at the time, around $30, $40. And you could gain the deed, free and clear, from the U.S. government. That's how much money, or that's how much land the U.S. government had. They're just giving this stuff away for free. Now you can imagine what people overseas are going to think about this. They're giving away land, right? So how is this going to impact immigration? A lot of people from Germany, a lot of people from Ireland, a lot of people from Norway, Sweden are going to take advantage of this, right? And get their, this is kind of the start of the American dream. Get their land, start over here, and kind of that's going to impact the culture of the Midwest, right in this area. All right, so let's go back and take a look at this a little bit. 160 acres is very important. Now remember, this is 1862. This is before the Emancipation Proclamation. So there is a chance that after the Civil War, slavery would still be in effect. But Lincoln does not want slavery to spread to the West, and nor does Congress. Now that all the Southerners are out of there, they don't want to either. So 160 acres is going to limit this. It's going to prevent plantations from being built in these territories. How? 160 acres is 160 football fields, essentially. A good size for a small farmer, not big enough for a plantation. So slavery is probably dead in the West now. The other thing that's going to kind of prevent it is that you can't get multiple land grants from the Homestead Act because you have to live on the property at least 6 months out of the year. So if you live on one piece of land 6 months, 7 months out of the year, you can't live on the other one more than 6 months out of the year. Improving the land. You've got to put in roads, you got to put in fence posts. This is where the Johnny Appleseed mythology takes off. He was a real person. He went and started orchards in Pennsylvania and Ohio area, but he's already dead by now. But this myth kind of keeps going because a lot of people, what they're doing, an easy way to improve their land is to put in an apple orchard. So they throw out these seeds and you have apple trees, and when the people come to see if you've improved the land, yeah, put in apples. The apples were terrible because good apples don't come from seed. Now, for the Homestead Act and its impact on the United States, huge impact. 10% of America's land is going to be sold to given away to individual landowners through the Homestead Act. The only issue I think that we could kind of take a look at is that the failure rate. Only 40% of the applicants are going to successfully be able to overcome the challenges of setting up their homestead within that 5 years. So if you didn't set up your homestead and meet all those requirements, you didn't get the deed. So a lot of these people either moved back east into factory jobs, or they became ranch hands and then eventually maybe possibly bought their own land, but it was very, very hard to get those things started. These are rough conditions. The other thing is, with the 14th Amendment, if you were born in America, you were allowed the same rights as anybody. So a lot of former slaves are going to take advantage. I say a lot. The exodusters, the people leaving the South, are going to be moving to the West. The cowboy culture. A lot of people don't talk about this, but cowboy culture was a triracial society. A third Hispanic, a third white, and a third African American. The other one that's really kind of a cool land act that they passed during the Civil War is the Morrill land grant. We're trying to build an industrial society, but we're also trying to promote agriculture because we've got to have people fed if we're going to have them working in factories. All right, so what the Morrill Land Grant Act is going to do, it's going to take some of this land and it's going to give 30,000 acres to a state for each of their members of Congress, so senators plus their representatives. Now, this land could be in their state, like Iowa. Right? They could sell off portions of the land that the federal government owned in Iowa. Or if you're like North Carolina, we didn't have a whole lot of federal land. So we're selling off pieces of the West. Right? New York really gets a good deal because they're going to sell off the forest of Wisconsin and make a lot of money because it's timberland and that is going to be worth more. But we get to sell that off at market value. So it's going to be higher price than what the federal government would be selling stuff for, especially with the Homestead Act. But the money that's raised from that has to go to a college that pledges to do 3 things. It has to teach agriculture. It has to teach engineering and mechanical arts. And it has, because remember, this is 1862. They're very concerned about the war, the Civil War. So you also have to have basically a JROTC program. You have to teach military arts as well. And these are all the Morrill Land Grant universities, all around the nation, especially the ones with the white stars, or not the white stars, the red dots. That's the first Morrill Land Grant Act. So you got the University of Maine, University of Massachusetts, Penn State. A lot of these have the word state behind them. Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan State and Penn State, I believe, are the first couple ones that are seen as the first Morrill land grant universities. The ones in North Carolina are NC State and NC-A&T. Now let's take a look at that for a second. Well, let's stay here for a second. Another thing you'll notice is that in the north, it's usually one land grant university. In the south, there's two. That's because of Jim Crow. That's because of separate but equal. Right. The other thing about this is most of these are going to be public universities. There's only, I think, three. I believe it's Cornell, Dartmouth, and no, it's Cornell, the University of Delaware, and MIT. But also the Morrill land grant is going to be the basis of NC State versus UNC's rivalry, because the first college is going to be UNC. They're already there. They're already established. NC State does not exist in the 1870s. So the university that's getting these Morrill land grant funds, where we're selling off this land, is UNC. But they're not playing by the rules. Right? They have skirted it. They've essentially put programs in their course catalog saying, yeah, you can learn about agriculture here. You can learn about engineering here. But there's no actual classes. Right? There's no professor, and there's no way to fulfill that pledge for the Morrill land grant. So by 1885, people are getting upset with this, and there's going to be a group of young men called the Watauga Club that's going to get together, push the General Assembly for a separate agriculture and mechanics college. That will become NC State, which started out North Carolina College of Agriculture and Mechanical, NCA. Right. Another one is going to be the Pacific Railways Act. Again, the context of this is during the Civil War, we've got to get California tied to the rest of the nation. We've got to reduce that barrier between Missouri and California. We've got to shorten that distance. If we can't physically do it, we need to do it by improving the rate we can travel across that inland ocean. And we want to avoid dangerous ocean voyages and the wagon trains that are going to take 6 months. We want to shorten this thing. So how we're going to do this is we're going to promote this transcontinental railroad by giving these railroads land. They're going to get 10 square miles of land on either side of the tracks. It's going to create a checkerboard pattern, but what those railroads are going to be able to do is that they're going to be able to sit on that land. That land is going to be very valuable because a lot of people are going to want to live right beside the railroads. Protection from native attacks, get your crops to market really quickly. You're usually going to have towns, so it's easier to buy and sell things. So they're going to be able to sell this land for buku money. Right? Make a whole lot of money off of this. And this really is what's going to get the railroad built. This entices these companies to build these things. Another one we got to take a look at is the Oklahoma Land Rush. Now, Oklahoma had been known as Indian country, and that's where we had taken the Cherokee, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and the Seminole, and other Indian tribes, and pushed them west of the Mississippi River, giving them this large area to settle in. The only issue is that there's a whole lot of open land that's not being used. And if it's not being used, the federal government's going to say, you're not doing what you promised to do, you're not using this to the best ability of the land, so we're going to take it back. Thanks for playing. And that's exactly what they do. Any unclaimed territory now is going to be put in this big pot. The only question is, how are we going to fairly divvy it out? So come up with this genius idea. We're going to take the map, we're going to take all this land, we're going to map it out, we're going to survey it. In each plot, each 160 acre plot, we're going to put a white flag in it. Right? And then for the next month and a half, people are going to come into the deed office and sign up for the Oklahoma land race. Right? And they're going to scout out the places that they want to settle. We're going to get all these people together on a starting line on one end of the county and have these big cannons and guns fire off basically like a big race. And there they go, they're off. They're racing as quickly as they can. Once they get there, they have their own flag with a number on it. They take that other one out, they put their number in there, and they've staked their claim. That's their land. They're looking for the best land. Seems like a fair way to do it, but people rigged the system. Right? Not everyone was honest. There's going to be some people that do leave at the boom of the cannon. There's 50,000 people lined up on this one day to race to find their land. So competition is going to be fierce. People are going to get into fights. People are going to get injured. People are going to get killed. Some people decide that they don't want to risk that. They go and they hide out the night before. They find the best land. They set up camp. They keep their horses near. They fake like they were in the race, so they kind of run around and get really sweaty really quick. And then they stake their claims. And the person who's in the lead of the race is like, how do you know? All right, the people who left at the boom of the cannon are going to be known as Oklahoma Boomers. The people who left and cheated are going to be known as the Oklahoma Sooners. So it's the biggest false start penalty in the world, but the Oklahoma football team is named the Sooners. Yeah, after the Cheers. All right, now for something completely different, but it is related. This is a land act. It does deal with the West. So let's take a look at it. Wow, we're already to 16 minutes, so I'm going to try to get this done really quick. All right, the Dawes Severalty Act is very similar to the other acts in that it is giving away land to people. 160 acres, you can settle it, it's yours, you can pass it down to your family. The only issue here is that it's kind of rigged. This is directed towards Indians, specifically on the Great Sioux Reservation, trying to get them to assimilate fully into American culture. And one of the problems is that land is not being owned. People are not farming. People don't see a stake in the country because they don't own land. The tribe owns the land, but individual families don't. So the U.S. government is going to try to break the power of the tribe with the Severalty Act. And they're also going to provide for the education of Native children, but a lot of that education is trying to suck all the Indianness out of them and replace it with American culture. The slogan is "Kill the Indian, save the man." Right? Trying to get them to fully assimilate into American culture. But the big thing about this, it's going to leave a lot of open land. Right? That's what the Sioux started out with, half of South Dakota. Then they get a little of it taken away. Right? The Black Hills are going to be given up because we found gold there. Right? And we want gold. And then we're going to take away a lot more land, put them on 160-acre plots so that we can build a railroad to get to the Black Hills gold. The only issue with this is 160 acres in Nebraska, very fertile, black soil. Corn just loves to grow there. Wheat just loves to grow there. South Dakota, not so much. This area right in here, geographically is called the Badlands. It doesn't get that name ironically. It's Badlands. In some parts of that area, the land physically tries to kill all plant life. The soil is acidic. Is essentially what it boils down to. So 160 acres in Nebraska could probably feed a family and give them a little bit to sell off. 160 acres of land in South Dakota, not going to happen. Also, this is to pass down to future generations. So if you can't settle, if you can't prosper on 160 acres of land on this, 80 acres is going to be even worse. 40 acres, no. It's not going to work. It's not going to be good. And that is one of the contributing reasons that the Great Sioux Reservation, most of it looks like this. Right? Abject poverty on reservation. The Severalty Act is a big part of that. Alright, but the takeaways I want to leave you with as we're nearing 20 minutes. The West. Yes, truly, it is about rugged individualism. Going out there, testing yourself against the elements, against nature. But on the other side, it is a perfect example of big government work. The government helping out people to settle these lands. It isn't the free market that settles the West. It's the government giving that land away, right? Providing for the railroads to go out there. The railroads aren't going to build the Transcontinental Railroad without that free land that they can then sell. Right? It's going to be a new start for many, but there are still a whole lot of challenges that they've got to overcome. 40% of homesteaders get their deed. I mean, 60% fail to get their free land because they can't survive for 5 years on that land. The Homestead Act is a continuance of Jefferson's idea of America. And the Morrill land grant is going to increase education, increase literacy, and it's going to help us boom industrially. Because we have a new educated workforce that knows how to work iron, that knows how to put into steel, right? And land for white settlers means that there's going to be less for natives. It's a zero-sum game, right? More for one means less for the other. Alright, so we're going to try to shorten these up. This is a little bit longer than I expected, but we got to get started.